So, while this is going to be a review of the 2020 high-grade Windam, it's not only about the Windam necessarily. It's a larger look at the high-grade Cosmic era line and whether or not grunt suits get kind of the same level of love and care from Bandai's perspective as the hero suits from Gundam Seed Destiny and so on. So, keep that in mind, but this is the review here on the Gunpla Network of the 2020 high-grade Cosmic era Windam, and is brought to you by those fine folks over at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all things plamo and Gunpla here in North America. With flat-rate shipping to the US and Canada, a private warehouse option, and a vast catalog that's restocked regularly, they're going to have you covered for whatever you need. So when you're checking out that vast catalog, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save yourself 10% off. So I want to start off at the top and say this is not unique to the high-grade Cosmic era line. The grunt suits kind of get shafted in most Gunpla, but this is a unique opportunity where I've heard a lot of people say this is just as good as the Destiny, as the Infinite Justice, as the Strike Freedom. So I wanted to see, with this being a little bit more elaborate than the Dagger, if this is as good as those, and how so. Now, when we at least look at the detailing, as far as the design, it's pretty screen accurate. I mean, the Windam is not super elaborate, but it's also more than the Dagger, right? The Dagger is the GM. This would be kind of like the GM 2 or 3, I guess. Or maybe the demo if you want to go that route. I'm not sure exactly what the UC comparison would be, but it's just more advanced, right? And you kind of get that. You get multiple colors here, all of them separated in plastic, so the main body is actually very impressive. All the gray, the blues, the kind of teal color, the yellow on the head, all of that is plastic. So good job on you, Bandai. You did phenomenal there. As far as surface detailing, it's not super light, but it's just got detailing in weird areas. Like the thighs, the lower thighs have very interesting panel lines. The thrusters on the side of the legs do. The legs, kind of the calf area, has some opportunity depending on how you kind of put it together. And then that's kind of it. Like all of the plastic really does the work for it. All of the different color separation there. Because it's not centrally located just to the torso like a lot of kits are. It's quite nice, actually. Like, there's just not a lot. I don't want to say there's not a lot to say, but it just doesn't. It's not an elaborate design from a surface detailing standpoint. So, you get a little bit of it, but it's not too crazy. The plastic being color separated is nice. You really don't have much outside of that, and not having stickers on it's also pretty cool. Now, once we get it all armed up, this is where we start to see the stickers. The shield, the little like triangle bit that comes off of the kind of middle portion, is supposed to be yellow. I don't remember if there's a sticker for that, but I don't think there was. I think I used all the stickers. But the backpack has a lot of stickers on the leading edge of the wing, the tip of the wing, and the same deal on the fins on the top. And it's not bad. It looks passable. If you want to paint it, obviously it's going to look better, but if you don't want to mess with it, they fit fairly well. And as someone who's not a great sticker fitter, even if you're not great at it, you'll probably make it look pretty good. The gun's cool looking. There's a lot of cool stuff from Seed Destiny that is a little harder to implement in plastic. I'll say that for that much. And we'll see it more in a moment, but all armed up, it looks pretty imposing. You have the missiles on the wings, you have the rocket pods on the wings, the shield isn't as bad as other shields in terms of bumping into stuff, and having a jetpack, you kind of think that would be a little bit more of a problem. But it does have two ball joint plugins, so you can adjust where it is. You can have a little further down like this, or you have it more centralized, and then it bumps into stuff. So you have some options there. The rifle doesn't bump into anything. It's fine. It does have some weight issues we'll look at in a minute, which is weird for a very simple piece of plastic, but it is what it is. And that's kind of it. Like, this is the accessories other than beam sabers. That's it. And it looks good, right? It's not doing more than it needs to, but it's also kind of just what it is. Like it's like the Leo, right? The high grade Leo was good because it was just the Leo. This is kind of the same deal. It's not doing too much, but it is visually, at least with the jetpack and everything, exactly kind of what you would expect. Now, in terms of posability, we're going to start on the ground because this was probably the most impressive thing for me, is this pulls off like kneeling poses really well for some reason. I don't know why. The Windam is typically like a jet-powered like flying machine in most of Sea Destiny, so it's a little weird that it gets this treatment. It's not a bad thing. It's just something I found kind of strange, but a pleasant surprise to be sure. It's like cool. You could have a cool like ground pose here, bringing the rifle across the shield, having it kind of like mid-fight, maybe the backpack's not working or something. And the shape of the feet, I think, do help stabilize it quite a bit. But being able to move the legs where you need them and have the knee pop out far enough to where it stably can sit like this is pretty cool. Now, if you don't want to go with something like this, you don't have to. You can use the beam sabers on the ground, as we saw in the beginning. And it works. Like, it bends far enough forward. The jetpack is essentially located enough to where it's not pulling the back down, which is usually a pretty big problem for these seed kits. So you do have a fairly nice torso joint, and the way the backpack is designed, where it doesn't have like the big bottom thrusters like the ale pack, and it's fairly close to the torso, it kind of joins into the center of gravity of the kit. So you can have it fairly easily balanced on the ground like this. Now, one thing I will say is you do get to see, it's very minor, and this is not really like what this kit was designed for anyway, but you'll see some hollow areas, most particularly in the thrusters on the outsides of the legs. There's hollow on the inside, and being as big as they are, that feels a little weird. Like even just a bottom plate to cover the little bit of portion that kind of goes past the calf would have been nice, but it's a very minor nitpick, just something you can see as it rotates around here. But it is cool that you can have flying poses, melee poses, shooting poses, and you can do most poses on the ground if you so choose. But of course it has a jetpack, so we want to see it flying, and with this traditional seed pose here, we get to see the big problem with the rifle. And I won't even say that this is a problem with the rifle, because it's not that heavy. Sure, it is a fairly large beam rifle, and it does fit in the hand quite well. It's just the ball joint in the wrist is far too weak to hold it. And this has been pretty much like this right out of box. Is this a simple fix? Yes. Is it something that happened to the other high-grade Cosmic Era suits that I've messed with? No. So it's a little disappointing. Now, that being said, is it a deal breaker? I wouldn't say so. I'll go more in depth at the end of this review where I kind of give you my overall recommendation. But it's just a bit of a bummer. Like, it's a cool beam rifle. It's very simplistic. They didn't even go as far as giving it like a swivel handle, which I never use anyway, but is pretty standard fare for Gundam stuff. So it's not complicated. It's not heavy, especially for as big as it is. But just that joint is just very weak. But outside of that, the rest of the pose looks fine. You can move the head very easily. You can adjust the backpack. The shield being very narrow helps it move around quite a bit as well. The legs move all over the place. The sides, the front and side skirts move pretty well. Of course, the back skirt is stationary, but that doesn't really play into this. But from an articulation standpoint, it's very usable for the most part. Now, if you want a kind of flying forward thrusting pose, you can absolutely do that. And as long as you bring the beam rifle in to where it's got more points of contact up against the arm, it works pretty well. So, no cool Gundam outstretch shooting pose, but if you want to have a flying pose or more kind of static pose, you can absolutely pull that off. Of course, having special effect parts also helps. You can find stuff like that at Canadian Gundam as well. But yeah, I mean, this is a suit that, while it's not overly flashy, can look really good in poses like this. This is in a weird way like a transit Gundam, right? It's like it moving, it doing things that aren't fighting looks pretty cool. The backpack obviously helps sell that, but it's balanced enough as well where even on a stand like this, it's not like trying to pull the stand too far forward. So you do have a good overall experience imposing largely thanks to that center of gravity. And it's pleasant, right? Like a lot of the high grade Cosmic Era stuff that I've talked about before, the more elaborate stuff, the Strike Freedom, the Infinite Justice, when I would get frustrated with those kits if I did, or I know I did with the Strike Freedom, it was because like the elaborate gimmicks just didn't work very well. Here that doesn't really exist, so it's just a solid model kit. It's, like I said, it's just refreshing. Now, if you do decide to put it up against some other Destiny things here, you can absolutely do so. We have the Destiny Gundam using its little palm electric doohickey, and you can get a pretty convincing, like, getting shocked or whatever pose, and, you know, it works. Like I said, the center of gravity in the tightness of the joints in the torso really helps sell a lot of effects that a lot of seed kits particularly have issues with because their backpacks are so heavy. This centralizing all the weight kind of right up against the back helps alleviate most of that. And yeah, I mean, it looks good with the high-grade Cosmic Era Destiny here. You'll see it alongside some other stuff. But yeah, if you want to army build this and have a scene display on your shelf of the Destiny or the Strike Freedom, or I guess even the Freedom, or the Infinite Justice just tearing through these, you can absolutely do so, and, you know, it feels like it's supposed to be there. Now, if you want it to be kind of the cooler counterpart on your shelf, you can absolutely do some really nice dynamic striking poses as we see it here, cutting down Murasame. And even with the Murasame being as old as it is, these don't feel too far out of each other's leagues. So if you have a lot of like the M1 Stray, the Murasame, or even some of the older Zaft suits, the Jin, the Seagyu, the Goof Ignited, they still fit. They still work well. They're all proportioned fairly similarly. So if you want them on your shelf, either in a static or a dynamic pose like this, you can absolutely pull them off and they look convincing. Now, you can change the backpacks here. The same peg system works on the Strike that works on the Windam. So we have the Strike here with the kind of more generic backpack and the Windam here with the Ale Strike pack. And you do have to bring the legs back a little bit. But since the feet are so big and they have the two little like struts that stick out the back, you don't have to do it as much as you do on the Strike, which is actually pretty cool. I really, really wish we would have seen some kind of like option pack released for Striker packs or Wizard packs or whatever for these. Like, I understand that, you know, that stops Bandai from selling an extra kit, but at the same time, like, they've done it with IBO, they've done it with The Witch from Mercury, they've done it with Kyokai Senki. I would love them just to go back and be like, hey, here's a high-grade Cosmic Era Striker pack set. Or, you know, do what they did with the Rio grade and just release it with the Sky Grasper. I'd be totally fine with that. I'd love a new Sky Grasper in high grade. Not because it, you know, never got one, so, you know. But it is really cool that this uses that functionality. I really, really enjoy that. I think it looks pretty good, too. Like, I think if they had a deactive Strike and you had this backpack, that matches really well. And then the Striker pack, even with its color difference from the Windam, it looks pretty solid. So that brings me to kind of the conclusion here of answering the question I had at the top. Does the Windam get the same treatment that like the Infinite Justice, the Strike Freedom, the Destiny gets? And kind of. The main body, absolutely. Right? Of course, it's not going to have as many gimmicks. That's a design standpoint. All you can do with it is make the body solid. They can't go in and like put beam sabers in the legs like the Infinite Justice or give it cool flashy effect parts because it doesn't really have any in the show. So you just kind of work with what you have, and the body is phenomenal, aside from the weak wrist joint. The gun could have been a little bit more elaborate, but that's not something I'm overly irritated about. The shield is fine, but I hate displaying things with shields just because they get in the way, so, who cares on that aspect. But the backpack is, I think, the biggest point of contention for me. It looks good. The stickers, even for some of the more complex angles, fit very well, but I really would have liked to have seen more of that in plastic. Like, I get, it's a simple backpack, and if this had come in like a separate striker pack set of accessories, fine. But it came with the Windam. It would have just been nice to have most of it plastic, and maybe not all of it, but the rings around like the turbines, having those in plastic would have been nice. They're stickers and they blend fairly well, but it would have just been, fewer stickers, more plastic gets this closer to being in line with everything else, because the Strike Freedom, the Infinite Justice, and the Destiny really don't have a lot of sticker usage, almost if at all, on any of them. So it's a little disappointing to see that here. Now, once again, it's not a deal breaker. They fit fairly well. It's just kind of the only thing I have to say about this from a negative standpoint. So if you're a high-grade Cosmic Era fan, you've liked these other 3 suits you're seeing it here with, absolutely. This is in the same vein. I would highly recommend it. I'd say it's a must-buy. If you like Seed designs, must buy. If you just want a solid high grade, or you're trying to help someone get into the hobby and they don't really know where to start, and they don't really have a preference on design, this or like the Dagger. It's simple, it's quick, and it can look fairly cool right off the bat without being too elaborate or time consuming. If you don't like Seed stuff, obviously, then I'm surprised you made it this far in the video, but thank you for that. But yeah, that's really the only thing. If you don't like Seed, obviously this is not for you, but pretty much everyone else, I would say this, you're not going to go wrong in buying. Anyway, those are my thoughts. If you have this and you have opinions on it, put them in the comments down below. If you have questions, put them in the comments down below. I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, friends, I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. Please do your best to stay safe and keep on building.